Welcome to Face the State. I'm Rob Hanrahan. Once again, another special edition of Face the State. This week we have Senator Scott Wagner and Jeff Bartos as our guests, both running for governor and lieutenant governor. We're going to talk about the joint ticket in a minute, which I find fascinating, Senator. But first I want to get both of your reactions to the tragedy in South Florida, in Parkland, at that school.
It's tragic, and my heart goes out. Our family's heart goes out for the parents of the victims and everyone that was there. This is senseless, and we're learning more about the shooter and his background and mental health issues and just other issues. But it's very unfortunate.
And Jeff, just for any student that was in that building or there, it's very, very jarring and unsettling.
Yeah, I think what bonds all of us is as parents and as community members. Cheryl and I have two teenage daughters, both in high school. Your heart breaks. There's no, you can't make sense of the senseless and the violence and the tragedy. It just, as a community, you come together, you hug, and you express your condolences, you express your support and love. But it is an absolute heartbreaking moment for the state of Florida and for our entire country.
And something the entire country will be taking a look at. Gentlemen, I promised to bring you on the program to talk about the gubernatorial campaign. So let's get started with you being the first to choose a running mate, Senator. Why, and how is that going to work out?
Well, Rob, it's a great question. I've been in the Senate for 4 years, and I watched the dysfunction between the current lieutenant governor and Governor Wolf. And also I know the task at hand with solving a lot of the issues in Pennsylvania is going to be large. So I had an opportunity to meet Jeff last year, and I got to know him more and more. And at one point I said to myself, it's really a shame he's running for the Senate because he would be a great candidate for lieutenant governor. And I come from the private sector, and I'm not used to having my teammates picked for me. I like to pick my own team. So Jeff and I had dialogue, and here we are. And this is going to be a team effort. I really see Jeff and I working together, almost parallel. That if we were able to have the opportunity to split up half the agencies, Jeff spent his time in the first 90 days, in say 15 of the agencies, and I was at the other 15. I think we can get a lot done. And
so if you win, you're going to work together as a team right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Jeff, what do you bring to the table?
Well, I'm a private sector businessman. I've been involved in real estate development and running small businesses really for the last 15, 17 years. I'm an attorney by training. And Scott and I really bonded initially, as you travel all over the state as you're campaigning, we bonded initially over this idea that we are eager to have our children and grandchildren and everyone's children and grandchildren choose to live in Pennsylvania. We want a dynamic, growing state that attracts talent from all over, where our fine institutions of higher learning students stay here after graduation. And so we bonded over that initially, and it was really why we were running. We want a state that attracts people. And so for me, for Scott to ask me to join the team and to really focus in on economic growth, on dynamic leadership, and really moving our state forward on the economic front was something that was a very attractive opportunity.
Okay, it's one thing for me to ask you and for us to talk about what you would do if you take office, if you would win this race. How will this make the campaign different, having a running mate?
Well, I think number one, Jeff understands the issues. He has private sector experience. He has leadership skills. He also has come from a world where results were expected, and that's a lot of our problem right now in Harrisburg. We don't have leadership in place. We haven't for a long time. And I'm not trying to put anybody down, in past governors or past lieutenant governors. But at the end of the day, we have a large operation, and leadership is required. And you have to have someone who truly understands the issues. I just came from an event that the state chamber was hosting today. And they were talking about employment, retaining employees, and skills that people have that currently work, and how we have to work on enhancing the skills of those current workers. And then also we have a skilled labor crisis. And again, I could go on and on about this subject because I've lived it in the private sector. Yeah. But it's so important that we have a team, and I use this as a team that has experience, and that we have the leadership. Jeff has, he has the same skills that I have. And, I happen to be probably, I'm 18 to 20 years older than Jeff. But at the end of the day, I think this is a huge opportunity for Pennsylvania. The problems at hand, I'll give you an example, the opioid heroin crisis. This is not just a Democrat or Republican issue. It's everybody's issue. The skilled labor crisis, property taxes, everything that we talk about in Harrisburg, it isn't exclusive to one party. We're going to start talking about the issues and how we're going to solve the issues. Because I can tell you something, that we are looking for Democrats to vote for us. And that's a big deal, because we want to solve the problems of Pennsylvania.
Jeff, I managed to get the two of you together in one place. Now, I imagine as you head into this campaign full steam, that'll probably change, right?
Absolutely. And I think Scott had great vision and great leadership to say early on, I want to have a lieutenant governor who I can campaign with from day one, who then when we win the primary, we're ready to take on the tremendous fight we have ahead in the general election battle with an incumbent governor and lieutenant governor. And then we got to hit the ground running if we're fortunate enough to be elected by the citizens of Pennsylvania. And so you're right. So one of the advantages we have in the campaign is from day one, we're in different places all the time. It is rare, as you said, to be in the same place at the same time, because Scott will be in Cumberland County and I'll be in Schuylkill County, or he'll be in Westmoreland County and I'll be in Montgomery County. And we're always strategically going to parts of the state carrying the same message, the same energy, the same vigor, but in different parts. So we can cover twice the amount of territory.
Perhaps why your opposition decided to go the same route. Now, my question to you, Senator, is what would happen if you win and Jeff doesn't?
Well, it'll be interesting. It'll if it plays out that way, that's the way it plays out. But
you continue on, right?
I will continue on. But Jeff, people have to realize Jeff has the skill set. Actually, Jeff, it probably has more, more from the, the negotiating side, working with the legislature. Jeff, I have shortcomings, and I'm going to be the first to admit that. And Jeff complements my shortcomings. So where I'm a hands-on operations person, there's a lot that Jeff can compliment me on, and that's how we're going to convince the voters. Jeff brings a depth of experience.
Are we looking at the future here, Senator? There's been some talk of changing the way Pennsylvania works as far as the lieutenant governor runs totally separate, lives off in a different residence, totally separate from the governor. A lot of times they don't even talk. We appear to have that situation now. Could you be forging the future here?
Potentially. Listen, I think that we have a system that's not working. I mean, this is a very large enterprise here in Pennsylvania. We would be a Fortune 50 company if we were on the New York Stock Exchange. And
dead last.
We have to. We'd be dead last. We'd be in bankruptcy right now. Actually, as a public company, we could file bankruptcy. As a state, we can't. But at the end of the day, I think there's opportunity for change here. And I listen. The time is now. We are dead last on a lot of lists. And it's really unfortunate because we have a great state, we have a great location, we have great resources, we have great people, and the perfect location and all this natural gas that we have in Pennsylvania, but we don't have the infrastructure to get it to the markets. No, this is the time. We're at a crossroads. It's either we go down State Street and we either turn left and go down towards I-83, or we turn right and just fight one-way traffic, or we just go straight and drive in the river. I think we should turn left and move into the future.
Jeff, I've got 30 seconds left. Your comments on the governor's budget address.
Well, I was very much in favor of his wearing an Eagles hat as a lifelong Philadelphia Eagles fan. And then from there, I thought the address really kind of went downhill. But I thought his approval of the Philadelphia Eagles, it was astounding to me that in prior budgets, it was all about raising taxes, $4 billion, all of these kind of tried and true but failed policies on the liberal agenda, the leftist agenda. And this year, election year, we're going to talk about the Eagles. We're going to do a little cheer, and then I'm going to talk for maybe 10 minutes about a severance tax that he knows is going nowhere. And then he stopped. I mean, goodness gracious, 12 minutes, 15 minutes on a budget address in the fifth largest state in the country. We can do better than that.
Gubernatorial candidates Scott Wagner and Jeff Bartos, his running mate, back with the CBS 21 Political Insiders right after this with more questions for you guys and where you want to take the state. We'll be right back. We are talking about the governor's race, and we have, of course, governor candidates, Senator Scott Wagner and Jeff Bartos, candidate for lieutenant governor, both on the program. Charlie is here over there, but let's start with Mark Single.
Well, first of all, I want to comment on this teaming up at this early phase. The record will show that way back when I was running for lieutenant governor, Bob Casey indicated a preference. And some say he took me from the obscurity of a state senator seat to the oblivion of lieutenant governor. but it helped me. It really was the difference in my race for lieutenant governor. So there are those that argue, just let the people decide and, have them vote and all that. But I like it. I think it makes a lot of sense to indicate a preference. So I think you did the right thing.
Thank you.
So you found common ground with the Democrat right here on the show. Charlie.
Well, let me just follow up with that real quick, because you asked a question, Rob, that I think is very interesting, but there's a corollary to it, because the gubernatorial candidates and lieutenant gubernatorial candidates don't run as teams in the primary. So you were asked, Senator, what would happen if Jeff Bartos won and you lost, or he lost and you won. I want to ask the reverse. Jeff, what if you win and Senator Wagner loses? Are you comfortable running with any of the other Republican candidates for governor?
Well, of course, let me start with saying it's obviously a hypothetical. I'll answer the question, but it's a hypothetical. I think Scott and I, as both the endorsed candidates in the Republican Party, we will win the primary. But as a hypothetical, I'm running for this office because I want to help Scott execute his vision for Pennsylvania. I didn't grow up dreaming to be lieutenant governor.
But both of you are comfortable running with somebody else.
I haven't even considered, I sincerely haven't considered it. I don't think it's going to be a possibility, but my first and foremost goal is to serve as an integral part of Scott's administration.
Mark, and let me ask a tactical question, because we know we'll get into the issues during the campaign, and we know where people stand more or less, but I'm curious about this current election cycle. Every single special election that has occurred since the election of Donald Trump, Trump has been a millstone around the necks of the candidates. Do you intend to run with Trump, or do you intend to distance yourself from Donald Trump?
Well, listen, I'm not gonna run from that question. There may be parts of the state that the president will come in and campaign. We polled recently, and the president's approval rating is high in Pennsylvania. People are starting to see, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or independents, Mark, they're getting their 401k statements, the year-end statements, or stock market statements. They're getting paychecks. Things are happening. The president has a style that, some people question, and, the tweeting and everything. But at the end of the day, he went to Washington and he said that he was going to drain the swamp. We had to make change. He's not as popular down in the Southeast as he is, say, from Lancaster County West. We'll make that determination. But at the end of the day, my campaign is about Pennsylvania. My campaign's not about Donald Trump. And Jeff and I are running to focus on the issues of Pennsylvania. And I think that is going to be our theme, and that's going to be our mission.
Jeff, you're from a primarily blue area of the state, so how do you intend to attract the Democratic vote?
And so I was born and raised in Berks County, but we've lived in Montgomery County for 20 years. So yes, I'm very familiar with having to be a Republican in a very blue area, especially where we live now. Two things. Number one, Scott and I both are focused on addressing issues that Republican candidates traditionally have not addressed. So whether it's urban poverty or rural poverty or urban educational decay, and moving our education system forward to address the needs of parents and students that have been left out and forgotten for too long. Those are issues that Republicans, I think, own the solutions to. We just have to have the courage to go into communities that we have not reached out to yet and sit down and talk and make inroads and show that we care.
And that'll be your job.
That will be my job and Scott's job. We've really split that up, but we both care deeply about it. And I think that's something that I'm uniquely situated to do, having grown up in a rural county, but now living for 20 years in a much more suburban and urban environment.
Let me just ask another question about endorsements and support of people within the Republican realm and orb. One of President Trump's former friends, Steve Bannon, was a big supporter of yours and you of him. Is that still an endorsement that you welcome?
Well, let's back up. I met Steve Bannon in September. I had an opportunity to travel with him. I met him for the first time. I did a bio check on him. He's an interesting background. But time will tell. But he's come out and he's endorsed me, and I have not asked him to come to Pennsylvania, and time will tell. But again, it's back to, this isn't about Bannon or Trump. This is about Pennsylvania and what we can do for Pennsylvania. And there are people that like Bannon. There are people that don't like him. There are people that like me and don't like me. But at the end of the day, we want to talk about the issues in Pennsylvania that we see as the hot items that we have to work on.
Let's come right to it then. What's the most important issue in the fall campaign against Tom Wolf?
It is a governor who hasn't signed a budget in 3 years. Listen, we're bankrupt, Charlie, and we are going to go to zero-based budget when I become governor. We're going to find out where every dollar is going. We're going to find out where it comes from and where it's going. And I believe if we do zero-based budgeting, we're going to find $1.5 to $4 billion the first year. We need to continue to grow our economy. We have at least 200,000 skilled labor positions open in Pennsylvania. We can't find people. We need to retool and reinvent our education
One of your
system.
colleagues in the Senate, John DeSanto, whom I'm a big fan, says that we could cut state spending across the board by 10%. Do you think that's plausible?
I would do it differently. You'll never hear me use the word cut. I use the word manage. And when you manage, you go in and measure. And when you measure and you have the metrics, then you make business decisions based on those metrics. And there's a good possibility as it flows out. Yeah, there is a possibility. It could be 5 to 10%, could be reduced in spending. Listen, there are state employees still walking around with leather notebooks and legal tablets in. As people retire, and we are going to be faced with a challenge also to find people to replace the people that are retiring. If we retrain and give them tools and technology, there's a good possibility we can increase productivity. Headcount will go down. That's the opportunity here. It's about change, and change is scary for a lot of people. But this demographic shift and everything we're talking about. But yeah, John could be accurate, but
I don't want to
not
interrupt your train of thought here, but I do. Every gubernatorial candidate has in mind specific goals, things that they want to do. And it's distressing to me to hear on the campaign trail kind of the banalities. We're going to cut taxes, we're going to stop spending, blah, blah, blah. I want to know specifically where, if in fact you get elected governor, lieutenant governor, where specifically do you intend to cut? What services are you going to cut?
Mark, you're again using a word. You're putting a word in my mouth. I didn't use cut. Manage. I want to go into agencies, zero-based budgeting. And Mark, we do it in the private sector all the time. Exxon Corporation, a $300 billion a year revenue corporation, does zero-based budgeting. There are a lot of questions that I can't answer on this show because I don't have access to the numbers. I have to go in. I'm a business guy. I want the numbers, and I want accurate numbers. I'm in my fourth year of the appropriations hearings coming up. I can't get half the answers. So, it's about managing. It's not about cutting. And we need to make sure that the money is going to the right places. But, Mark, in 2006, Governor Rendell signed a statewide radio contract. It was supposed to start at the state police, and it was supposed to be developed and other agencies would use it. But in the summer of 2016, that contract was terminated after 10 years and almost $1 billion was wasted. I don't hear anybody screaming in Harrisburg about that. $1 billion wasted. And we have schools in Philadelphia, schools in Erie that are not, almost 100-year-old schools. That's the problem over here, Mark. Nobody cares. What about the $500 million that was wasted at Labor and Industry on the computer software upgrade? I don't hear anybody screaming. I'm going to do the screaming for the people of Pennsylvania.
Those are good specifics, and I'm glad to hear you say that.
And unfortunately, I'm out of time. Senator Scott Wagner, Jeff Bartos,
Thank you.
Governor candidate, Lieutenant Governor candidate. Gentlemen, thanks for both coming on the program. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Conversation.